Back here on HQ, Big 12 Media Day is kicking off from Frisco, Texas today. A two-day event. We're hearing from 8 of the 16 teams. 8 of those are talking today. That is BYU, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Kansas State, Cincy, UCF, Baylor, and Arizona State. So we have to look forward to SEC, the Big Ten, and so on and so forth. But back to Arizona State. Remember last season in the media preseason poll, they were picked dead last and then had this magical run. The only Big 12 team to make a CFP run. They lost in the quarterfinal against Texas in the Peach Bowl. Can they run it back? Are we going to see more Big 12 teams in the CFP? So the commish, Brett Yormark, he has some pretty high hopes and expectations. Take a listen.
I fully expect the Big 12 to earn multiple college football playoff bids this year and to show once again that we can compete with anyone. Speaking of the CFP, we continue to believe the 5-11 model proposed by the Big 12 and the ACC is the right playoff format for college football. We want to earn it on the field. We do not need a professional model because we are not the NFL. We are college football, and we must act like it.
All right, we have Danny Kanell and our guy Shehan Jeyarajah joining us from Big 12 Media Days. The commish also saying, I believe we're going to be the deepest conference in all of college football. And Shehan, I'll come to you first here because you were out there at Big 12 Media Days. Just how confident does Brett Yormark seem in his league here and really saying that they're going to get at least 2 bids in the CFP?
Well, Brett Yormark is somebody who's never shied away from speaking things into reality, I guess you can say. I mean, he did it, of course, with realignment a couple of years ago, and now I think he wants to do it with perception of the Big 12. But if you look back at the college football playoff era, I mean, it's been pretty common that the league has had multiple teams in the top 12 and top 16 conversations. Now, obviously, Oklahoma and Texas leaving the league has a major impact on that, and especially on the perception of it. But this is a league that expects to have multiple teams in the top 15 to 20 in the preseason rankings. So they need things to fall a little better than they did last season. I would argue that last year was probably as unfortunate a run as they had in terms of national perception. But again, Brett Yormark believes in his league. I do think that it's fair to call it one of the deepest conferences in all of college football. And I understand why he believes that there should be 2 left standing at the end.
Shehan, I love the mindset. I love the confidence, but I think he's off his rocker that they're getting 2 teams in. If the odds makers are right, they have the highest win total in the Big 12. Anybody, 3 teams are at 8.5. They don't have anybody higher than 8.5. And while that does speak to what he's talking about, the competitive balance, where top to bottom, there's not much difference, and they are an extremely deep league, it almost hurts them in the national conversation in the playoff model because you need somebody to be that standard bearer, the team that's out there that's an 11-1 entering the Big 12 championship game, or multiple teams that are there, and the talent is so dispersed and there's so many one-possession games, you just get clipped. So if you have multiple teams that are 10-2 like we saw last year, the reality is there's only going to be 1 that gets in. And I think he's massively misplaying his hand, saying we want the 5+11 because we just want the 16 best teams in college football for the future. I think that really hurts the Big 12. They think it's going to force the SEC to play 9 games, but if they do, you're just going to see 8-4 SEC teams make the case that they're better than 10-2 Big 12 teams. It's just not going to change.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, hey, last season we never would have thought, you know, in the preseason that ASU was going to go in there, so anything can happen. Shehan, we certainly appreciate it. Also, I would have stepped my fashion game up had I known that Shehan was going to show us up with that awesome blazer. So now we're going to transition, though, Danny, into your best quarterbacks in the Big 12, going 5 all the way down to 1. Starting at 5, who is it for you?
So first of all, I want to say I think this is the best conference as a whole with the quarterback play. Okay. I think they really have the best quarterback play that's out there. So number 5, I'm going to start off with Iowa State's Rocco Becht. He has been the most consistent starter that's out there. He's been the most experienced, and he's still just coming off 2 years as a starter. But in those 2 years, 48 touchdowns, only 17 interceptions, and he's putting Iowa State in a position to to win. Last year, I love what he did with his legs, bumped it up, increased his rushing attempts with 8 rushing touchdowns, over 300 yards rushing the football. I think he brings stability that Matt Campbell loves. Kind of brings very reminiscent of Brock Purdy when he was at Iowa State.
Okay, and so now transitioning over to number 4. This is a guy that has a lot of high expectations in year 2, and that is Avery Johnson.
Yeah, Avery Johnson, you talk about expectations. Remember last year, Will Howard was the quarterback who was supposed to come back, and Chris Kleiman, their head coach, said, no, we're going to make a move. We want to give Avery Johnson the reins to this offense. And so with that came massive expectations that he fell short of. But if you looked at it, it was almost impossible to meet those expectations. They thought he'd be a Heisman Trophy candidate and just waltz to the Big 12 championship game. Instead, it was a little bit bumpy. He is an incredible runner. He brings a great athleticism, as you see by his rushing total there. But unfortunately, you saw some first-year jitters, just blunders that are totally normal. But there was a 2-game blip where they lost to Arizona State, they lost to Houston back-to-back weeks. In those games, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, and that's really been something they're harping on this entire offseason with Matt Wells, their offensive coordinator. We've got to get more consistent play out of Avery Johnson. If they do that, they'll be right in the hunt.
Yeah, I've a lot of our colleagues are talking about him potentially being in the Heisman Trophy conversation, so we'll have to see. So for number 3, we're going to head to TCU.
Josh Hoover. I was just talking to Mike Renner about him. He is completely flying under the radar at TCU. The win-loss total didn't reach out there. They weren't in the Big 12 title hunt last year, but he had the best numbers of any of these quarterbacks. Almost 4,000 yards passing on the season. Was up there the highest completion percentage of guys returning with 66% completion percentage. He's been outstanding. 27 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Really made good decisions since he's been the full-time starter. Sonny Dykes, an offensive-minded coach. I think that TCU's Josh Hoover once again is going to put up massive numbers. They get him a little more help on the defensive side of the ball. This again, all these teams, you feel me kind of saying the same thing. They could be in the Big 12 title mix. It speaks to the depth of the league.
Yeah, and number 2 here, we're talking about Sam Leavitt. We just talked about Arizona State and all the magic that we saw in the CFP last season, but he's coming in as your number 2 Big 12 quarterback.
He was close to number 1 too.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep out somebody.
I thought he was going to be
it's hard to keep him out because of what they did last season, and helped them go to the Big 12 championship game, made the playoff, and he played really well, especially down the stretch. He was really close to flawless, especially in the Big 12 championship game against Iowa State. They had an offensive explosion. The game wasn't even close there. But I love what Kenny Dillingham has done with him, and I think the sky is the limit for him potentially. I actually have Arizona State to repeat in the Big 12 championship because of this quarterback. But the one question mark I have is, what do they do without Cam Scatterbo, their running back from last year? That's where I feel like Sam Leavitt has to step up and bump it up as an emotional leader of this team, because that unequivocally was Scatterbo last year.
Right.
That's a big void that he's going to have to step up and fill. But now that he's got that year under his belt, I think he will.
All right, so I already said I thought he was going to be number 1. Now we finally get to number 1, and we're looking at Sawyer Robertson. And I've heard folks talk about Baylor this season as potentially the whole package, probably the best offense in the Big 12.
I think so too. And Dave Aranda was kind of on the hot seat entering last season, and they made the switch to Sawyer Robertson in week 3. It was a little bumpy start. Started 1 and 2 as a starter, but it wasn't his fault. And I'm glad Dave Aranda stuck with him, and I assume every Baylor Bear fan is as well, because once they handed over the reins, they finished incredibly strong. 6 wins to finish the season, and in large part because of the consistent play they got from Sawyer Robertson, who, like a lot of these Big 12 quarterbacks, put up great numbers, was great with the decision maker with the football, close to over 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, really protected it. I think he could be the top when it's all said and done in the Big 12.
So, Danny, we heard the Big 12 commish say, hey, I think we're going to get at least 2 teams in the CFP from the Big 12. I know you said you're not really buying it,
yeah,
but Baylor and Arizona State, do you think both of them could get in?
I do, but Baylor has a tremendous schedule. They start off with Auburn week 1, then they travel to SMU week 2. I mean, you talk about a gauntlet.
Yeah.
If they can split those games and win one of those, they would beat the team from the ACC last year that made it. Auburn, who knows what's going to happen, but if you beat an SEC team, that should bump you up, as far as status-wise and people paying attention. It's at home. It's a Friday night to kick off the season. It's a great opportunity. Then their schedule's pretty manageable. That road game against TCU should be pretty tough, but they do play Kansas State at home, Arizona State at home, and Utah at home. Like, those are their 3 best opponents as far as the odds makers think. You catch them all at home. I think if they can get through that first stretch, those first 2 games, and really the first month, Arizona State at home, if they can get through that stretch 3-1, I think they've got a great opportunity to get there. Arizona State, on the other hand, a little bit of a trickier schedule. They do catch, Texas Tech at home, TCU at home, but traveling to Baylor, again, Mississippi State, they beat them last year, should be able to beat them again this year, but going to Utah, to Iowa State, to Colorado, those road games could be a little bit tricky for Arizona State, but I think Kenny Dillingham will have them ready to go.
Yeah, for Baylor, you're kind of like holding your breath until October 18th, and you can kind of relax a little bit. Danny, we appreciate it going through your best quarterbacks in the Big 12 with us. If you want to hear more from DK, you can hear him over on the Cover 3 podcast. They have some Big 12 Media Day previews, Cover 3 Summer School. All of that is in your feed right now. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.